purely pro forma, because I've got some things that I want to raise, and at least to have a democratic discussion about it. Well, why don't we have the debate and see where we get to then from that, if you prefer. Well, I'll speak to that. I actually, when I got this agenda and when I've seen what was coming up, I'm actually really surprised that there hasn't been appetite for this. I saw this here and I thought, oh, thank goodness, we're getting out of the dark ages. This is a no-brainer. It is a safer option to not trial these sort of things or pilot them. And I will tell you what's safe as a human race is to not progress with online surgery, with robotics. Let's not progress with consuming media through Netflix and high-speed fibre. Let's not explore a driverless car. Let's not embrace electric vehicles. Let's not advance computerised avionics. We haven't checked our mailbox at home for over a month, and as I drove to this council meeting, I looked at my letterbox and it's still empty, not one thing in it, because I don't receive anything in the mail. I don't want to receive anything in the mail. That? Yeah. Well, no, because I was actually a candidate in the election, so I might get one piece of mail every 3 years. The last time I posted anything in a snail mail physical box was actually at the last local body election in 2013. And given that I was running in the election, I still left it to the last couple of days to post it because it was such a pain and an inconvenience to participate in local democracy in a way that couldn't be more of a polar opposite to how I run my day-to-day life. I'm not convinced that I would have ever returned my census form without badgering from officials, because it's illegal not to, if I hadn't been able to do it online. I was appointed to a commercial board in private enterprise land in 2010, prior to being a city councillor. So I've been a director there for over 5 years, longer than I've been a councillor. And the biggest difference that I notice, and it never ceases just to give me a real wake-up call from coming from commercial land to council land, is how councils are so risk-averse, how we don't embrace new technologies. It was actually this year, 2015, that we were able to have an app to read our agendas. Like, really? Unbelievable. And at a company, if you don't innovate and think outside of the square, day after day after day, you become irrelevant. If you stand still, you go bankrupt. You can't just raise rates. You can't just say, well, this is the safer option. It's game over. So, yes, are there security concerns? Sure, you'd be really silly not to investigate that. Of course we need to explore that, but I think it's the wrong question to say, do we or do we not embrace the way the world's moving? I think we say, of course we embrace the way the world's moving and how people actually want to communicate and participate, but we want to ensure that the concerns that we have are appropriately addressed and that you get it right. If you talk about any systems, they've got their flaws. I'll tell you what's harder and what's easier. It's a lot easier to go along to someone's mailbox and pinch out a form that's been sitting there for a month because they don't check their box, tick it and chuck it in the post. You don't need to be a computer expert to be able to do that. You don't need to have a degree in quantum physics to be able to do that. Every system is going to have its drawbacks, but are you backing the coal company and its business plan in the 1800s, or do you back the Apples or the Googles? I know which one I want to back. I wanted to bring innovation and excitement to a city, and I thought that we did too. We're rebuilding the newest city in the world, and I want to be a council where someone's singing. Someone realised that I can hear that wailing. They've realised that they need to post something. I want to be that council that anything's possible. So don't let Masterton or Selwyn or Matamata be innovative than us. I don't strive to be in the dark ages. I think you can embrace to run a local government election like it was 1916, or you can understand that the world's changed, embrace that people want to participate in local government in a different way, like it's actually 2016. So you can push for our legacy to be safely swimming against the tide if you must. But my view is that you jump aboard and you ride that wave and you be at the forefront of innovation, cutting edge as a city, and actually be where the world is going. So I am absolutely staggered that there's no support from this, and this is everything I hate about local government, that we're actually having this conversation. It is a disgrace for us to not embrace that, and I think this is a step backwards, and you're confirming everything about conservative, boring Christchurch, and you're confirming everything about how dark ages local government is, because it's just not where the world's at. So wake up and get with the times. You're a disgrace if you don't look at this.
Yeah, I won't take very long. I would have thought I would have supported online voting. I'm a big fan of online engagement, online participation, tools like Lumio, Citizen Lab, and there's plenty more out there. But I think the reality is voting is a very, very different thing. It's a very unique thing. And I think in terms of participation, there are other ways of improving participation. So I don't really have an issue with that. I think the security issue is a big one, and the fact that the tech community has come forward and said they don't support this, for me, that's a big no-no. And Christchurch is a centre of technology, and so I would have expected that community to be supportive. If they're not, then it's back to the drawing board. I think also we've got enough issues on our plate at the moment. When I look at the calendar for the next 8 months, it's crazy. And I just think, do we need to be doing this right now? 2019, happy to look at it again. Happy for other councils to have a look at it, but it doesn't suggest to me on the evidence that's being presented to us that this is something that we really need to be exploring now. There's more work to do on the technology side. There are huge issues around login, passwords. I mean, sending out passwords in the mail, I mean, I can just see what a nightmare that could be. We've seen recently actually a changeover between BNZ and Westpac around the airpoints credit cards. They have had huge issues just dealing with the administration around that. So I think, agree with Jamie, we should be embracing online stuff as much as possible, but I don't think the evidence that we have today supports us as a council spending money on this right now.
Okay. Right. We can incorporate them. I was quite keen on this up until a few days ago. I actually think we have been quite progressive as a council. We do have live streaming. We have other online resources. I have some huge questions over this particular dimension of online participation, which actually is about the heart of our democracy. I'm still not satisfied. I've had a straight answer over the Auckland situation. I think there's more that sits behind that. I'm not prepared to put our reputation as a city at stake, and I say this on the back of and out of the context of loss of accreditation. We are clawing back our mana as a council and as a city, and I think the risks here are too great. I believe we can't guarantee mitigation of risk, and the potential risks here are far-reaching. Worst case scenario means invasion of our electors' private lives, and I think you think the natural hazards chapter's kicking up big time. If that happened, I think we'd be in big trouble. I haven't heard how there would be security over scrutineering of votes. We all know about the denial of service risk. I actually value our democracy too much to put its core process of voting at risk. And I don't think you can actually say that not proceeding with this is not progressive. I think that's a false dichotomy. In local government, we have a responsibility to make good decisions. And it's out of that which I think it's quite telling there wasn't a seconder for the staff recommendation. That in itself is a statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Pauline. It's an interesting debate, and I concur and endorse what Raf said, actually, because that's basically what where I was coming from as well. You know, you look at the general elections and we still toddle off down to a cardboard polling booth. Now, Jamie Goff talked about the dark ages, but the advantages of that is that it's a community experience. We're actually moving as a community, and there's a little bit of excitement generated from that. And my concern is that we casualise voting a little bit too much. So in that regard, I mean, you could say that the general election is incredibly dark age, but look at the advantages of it. So I'm just concerned that we casualise it and don't actually encourage participation because of that. You talk about the mailbox. Well, birthday cards, I'd much rather have a real birthday card in my mailbox than an e-card any day. So, you know, it's not all dark ages stuff, Jamie, is my view. And I just think the risks are there. The fact that it's not supported by the tech community, as Raf said, is a big concern. And I agree with the timing. Perhaps it could be looked at in the future, but just not yet for Christchurch. I wonder about Christchurch being a relevant place to trial this anyway, because of our circumstances are so changed. What results are we going to glean from it? Because we're still up in the air. Our boundaries are going to change incredibly next year anyway, so I'm wondering how we could apply the data from the return anyway. So I'd support postponing this.
Thank you. And I think Raf's probably put it the best so far, and I totally concur with that. With regards to our position, if we were going to look at commercial land and council land, we're stretched for cash. Our communities, we talk about this wonderful word resilience, they're being stretched as well, and we're asking even more of our staff. So if this were truly commercial land, I personally would be sitting back waiting for someone else to go for it, look at what they do, what the pitfalls are, and then be prepared the following election to go in and take out the apples, rather than having to be, and we've talked about the pilots, trials. I do not want the residents of the city and our staff to have to be the guinea pigs. I know these things have been all over the world, but I would prefer to watch someone else do it and then come out and do it when we have some stable ground to move forward on. So, you know, we heard about professional risk. We have reputational risk, and I don't think that the resilience of our city and our staff can be pushed any further. So I think I would far prefer to play safe for this election. I know it's dull and boring, but it is secure, and look at the benefits for the following election. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Andrew.
Yeah, I agree with Jamie that posting a letter does seem a little bit quaint, and that we do want to do everything we can to get out of the dark ages, as he put it. But we only need to do that in a way that we're totally confident in. And I don't have a level of confidence in this that meets a threshold that I'm comfortable with, unfortunately. I'm also with Raf. When I first read the report, I expected that I would be supporting this. It's exactly the sort of thing that I naturally would want to support. But when we hear from technical experts about doubts that they've got, you know, that's something that understandably sets some alarm bells ringing. Public confidence in council processes is one of the things we spend a lot of time talking about, and public confidence in the process that get councillors elected has got to be even more important than that. And, you know, we've heard from a number of people today, different sources, around, you know, issues of security, of democracy, of privacy, electoral integrity, concerns around the effects of technological advances, vulnerability, hacking, all of that sort of stuff. We've heard about errors, process errors, human errors, system errors, all things that don't sit well for me in a sentence about something as important as an election. So, as I say, there's a level of confidence that I just don't have in this that I would have hoped to have had. And I also agree that the time isn't right. We've got plenty of other fish to fry than this one at the moment. I'm sure and I'm confident the time will be right, and I'm sure there will be a time that I do feel comfortable supporting a trial of online voting or something more than that. But for me, that time is not now for a number of reasons.
Thank you, Andrew. Phil.
Well, I want to thank Skip Kirkpatrick, but also the submitters who talked to us earlier for the professionalism and the professional advice you've given us. And like I have to say though that basically our elections depend on the principle of the secret ballot, and the information we've got in terms of sort of being able to mitigate the damage that will be really limited. and in effect, it's basically may not be available at all. So it's very premature to, in my view, to even try to do what's called a trial with this project at this stage. Like, for example, if we were buying a new car, even if it was an electric car, you would want a test drive. We wouldn't get, our council wouldn't get that opportunity, even given that what we're hearing about doesn't have a good safety record. There's certainly also no real evidence at all that, in fact, that this will increase the voting turnout. And you know, basically, the Local Government Act requires us to vote according to what we hear in terms of evidence. And I think it's important. It's not a disgrace at all, and that in fact we keep our integrity and we look at the evidence that is actually in front of us. So I'm going to support the amendment that we have made today. I've moved, in fact.
Thank you. Jimmy.
In principle, I support a kind of a new trial. Try the new way, or try the kind of methodology through the new the technology, etc. But the voting is quite serious, because based on the both sides the kind of the information, I'm still doubt in this stage. You know, probably the constituent, even probably my fellow councillor, still know the 100% confidence if the result of the voting can be received by everyone, I thought. Because so one is uncertainty, the other one because due to the technology, still have a hack, still have phishing, still have some other the kind of the adverse effect. So it's still a bigger risk, etc. Another one is I still think, you know, even you are aware the election result in overseas, they will make a kind of turmoil. It's quite serious, you know. Even have the minor, just 1 or 2 votes, have any mistake, etc. They might thought that someone is intention, you know, to make the mistake, etc. So this quite serious. So in this stage, to me, it's difficult to support, you know, the online voting system. So I support this amendment. Thank you.
The list somewhere really safe. Was it Yanni and then Paul, was it? Have I missed anyone? Dave.
Thank you. Look, in 2013 in December, this council actually made a submission to say that we did support online voting, but I think it's fair to say that some quite significant security risks have happened around the globe in terms of the internet in that time. And also, I think the thing for me is, personally, I would love to see online voting, but the issue for me is that if people don't have confidence in it, and people, if we introduce this in a climate of fear, then I think it will be doomed to fail. So I think we do need to take some more time to get people on board to understand. Even a number of the comments that have been made through this debate, I think, show a little bit of a lack of understanding around some of the current systems. For example, people now can tell who's voted in the previous elections. There's information that is actually about people's voting behaviours that we can glean from the existing information that exists. So, you know, the idea that there is concern about how the information gets used, I think, is legitimate, but it needs to be kept in the context of the points that were made, that actually no system is safe or secure, and you can never 100% guarantee that that will be the case. But what you can do is look at how you mitigate some of those effects. So for me, you know, while personally I would have supported going to online voting, I've heard the concerns that have been expressed by around this council table and by the people that have made deputations, and it did raise an interesting point for me, which is this should be really part of a public discourse with our community, with the different sectors, whether it's the tech sector or whether it's the community sector, and with our citizens about how we could utilise it if we were going to do so. And unfortunately, because of the time constraints, I don't believe we can do that within this current process. So I won't, I'm happy to support the amendment. But I just also want to say, we can be progressive when it comes to voter turnout and voter participation. And, you know, although the method of voting is only one part of that jigsaw, you've got things like enrolment, you've got what happens during the voting time, you've got candidate information booklets and online tools. So there's a whole bunch of other ways we can use, I hope, technology and innovative and progressive methods to encourage voter participation and voter turnout. And so there were a number of things we raised through the Select Committee submission around extending the deadline on the day of voting, around having a national campaign coordinated centrally, around thinking more of how easy or how to make it easier for special votes to be cast. Because I agree with Jamie, anyone that's gone in to do a special vote during an election time, a postal ballot, it is an absolute dog's breakfast of a process and puts people off. And so anything we can do to make it simpler for people to participate, we should be looking at. And there will be ways other than online voting where we can address some of those issues. So I hope that when we get more information back, we'll support some of those other things that I think we can do. So, you know, I'm disappointed that we can't sign off on this today, but I understand the concerns that have been expressed. Things have changed since 2013 when we put the original submission in, and I think it is important that the public have confidence in our voting systems. And I just want to end with, you know, I think in Christchurch anyway, we certainly have had a fairly good track record with the current voting system and the current provider. And so, you know, that gives me confidence, but clearly others have got concerns. And so we do need to, I think, to spend more time working through those concerns before we make the step as has been suggested. So it's been a good debate. I think this is healthy to have these different points of view. And I think it's good that we are talking about it today, but really, as I think today's shown, to do this within an hour or within 3 days is not the appropriate way to bring it in if we wanted to go towards it.
Look, in my personal capacity, I love online stuff. I buy my groceries online. I bought my last car online from Auckland, so I don't think that's the issue from a private capacity, but we are dealing with public money, and we are dealing with quite a different situation to the private sector, and that's all around risk and risk appetite. You know, the private sector do risk more than the public sector. We know that the private sector can deliver buildings cheaper than we can deliver them because we have to go out and consult. So we have to be, you know, cognizant of that as well. So, you know, as I say, I'd be supportive of this here, but I think when we're dealing with public money and public outcome, I think we have to take that into consideration. And I just don't think we've had enough time to do that here at the moment, as Yanni pointed out, 2 to 3 days to bring this on board. I think it needs a bit more thought. But as I say, you know, in my personal private capacity, I like stuff online, and I think, you know, we need to progress, but I think right at this point in time, we've come through an earthquake. We're only 4 years out. We've got a lot on our plate, and, you know, everything we put onto our community at the moment seems to be a stressor, and we've put a lot of stress on over this last term, and I think right now is just the wrong time to go in here.
Okay, thank you, Dave.
Thank you. I'm going to support the amendment. Internationally, we experience hacking and banking, and even the most high-tech international security systems are hacked. So I really just don't feel comfortable with launching into an online voting system where the trial potentially does lend itself to be tampered with. And it's a trial, but as we've pointed out today, that trial has binding results, and until such time as I can have some confidence in the IT around this system and safeguards against fraudulent use of it, I would be happy to support with the direction we're going at the moment until we can get that safety.
Thank you. So can I now put it? Okay, I suspect it's going to be carried. I'll put that, which is there before you, declines to take part in the online trial for the 2016 local elections. I'll put that. Those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
No.
Do you want that recorded?
Yes,
Jamie?
please, may I have that recorded?
We can.
Electronically recorded? No, you'll record it via pigeons and...
Right, okay, I declare that carried. Thank you, that's that report. Thank you, guys.